The sun hung low over the alien marshlands of Virelia, casting long shadows on the twisted trees and glimmering pools. The air was thick with mist and the soft hum of alien insects. Among the marshes, a narrow river cut through the land, its waters dark and swift, reflecting the crimson sky. To the Virelians, the river was sacred, a lifeline and a test of strength. Lyra sat on her floating mobility device near the riverbank, her long, slender limbs trembling slightly as she adjusted herself. Her skin shimmered in faint shades of violet, and her large reflective eyes watched the flowing water with a mixture of fear and calm resignation. She could not move well on her own. Her legs refused to support her, leaving her dependent on her device for every step. Nearby, her family had gathered. Her father, Karn, tall and broad with scales that glinted like metal, paced angrily. Her elder brother, Dalen, stood at his side, arms crossed, eyes dark with contempt. Even her younger sister, Mira, who was usually gentle, avoided Lyra's gaze. "You are a burden." "Lyra," Karn said, his voice low and sharp. "Your weakness brings shame to our family. We cannot survive if we continue to carry you as if you were nothing more than a weight." Lyra's heart sank. She had heard words like this before, whispers and sidelong glances, but hearing them aloud, spoken as judgment by her own blood, was unbearable. She opened her mouth, tried to explain, but her voice came out weak, trembling. I can help," she whispered. "I know the paths through the marshes better than anyone. I can see things, patterns in the river, signs of storms, of predators." "Please don't," Delan interrupted, his scales bristling. "Your mind may see things, but your body cannot act. When it comes to survival, your sight does nothing. You are useless." Lyra felt a bitter chill in her chest. She had always known this day could come. Her family valued strength above all else, and weakness in their eyes was unforgivable. She glanced at the river, its waters dark and moving fast, swirling with unseen currents. She had always feared it, but now it seemed as if the river itself awaited her. Her father's hand rested on the edge of her mobility device. "It is time," he said. "Time to end your shame." Lyra's mind raced. She tried to reason with them, to plead, but it was useless. The river had been chosen as her fate. In Virelia, casting someone into the river was not only punishment, it was a ritual of cleansing, a way for the tribe to rid itself of weakness. Before she could react, Dalen pushed the device toward the edge of the riverbank. Lyra grabbed the side with trembling hands, but her grip slipped. The device wobbled dangerously. She could feel the cold water lapping at her legs, could sense the pull of the current beneath. Panic clawed at her chest. "Stop. Please stop," Lyra cried. Her voice carried across the water, sharp and desperate. Her family said nothing, their expressions hard and unmoved. They had made their decision. Just as the device teetered, a figure appeared on the opposite bank. A human, tall, with broad shoulders and a determined look, was running across the marshes, pushing through thick reeds and waterlogged soil. His name was Adrian Cole, an explorer from a human settlement nearby. Humans had only recently arrived on Virelia, studying the planet, learning its dangers and wonders. Adrian had seen the river from afar and noticed the unfolding scene. Without hesitation, he dove into the rushing waters. The cold shocked him immediately, but he did not stop. He could see Lyra struggling, her small frame almost swallowed by the current. His strong arms cut through the water as he swam toward her, fighting the river's pull and the hidden whirlpools beneath the surface. Lyra's device tipped fully into the water. She flailed, panic-stricken, and for a moment it seemed the river would take her, but Adrian reached her just in time, gripping her under her arms and pulling her close. "It's okay. I've got you," he shouted over the roar of the river. His accent was strange to Lyra's ears, but his voice carried an unmistakable tone of care and urgency. Lyra's large eyes widened in disbelief. Who are you?" she gasped, clinging to him. "A friend," Adrian replied, his voice steady. "You're safe now. I'll get you out." The current tried to drag them apart. Adrian's muscles burned as he fought the river, pulling Lyra toward a safer spot near the bank. Rocks jutted out from the water, and the river's edge was jagged and slippery. Every step required careful calculation. Lyra felt the first real touch of kindness she had known in her life, a warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold betrayal of her own family. Finally, they reached a shallow area. Adrian lifted her out of the water, keeping her steady. Lyra's limbs trembled uncontrollably, and water dripped from her hair and clothes. Her body was soaked, but her mind was alive with shock and awe. "You saved me," she whispered, disbelief lacing her voice. Humans? You actually… Adrian smiled gently. I couldn't just stand there and watch. No one deserves that. For a moment, the river seemed calm, as if acknowledging the act of courage. Lyra looked back toward her family across the water. Karn and Dalen were still standing, faces frozen in anger and confusion. Mira's eyes, however, reflected something different. Fear, maybe even shame. Lyra realized in that moment that her family had never seen a being act purely out of empathy before. Adrian laid Lyra gently on the ground. He noticed her weakness and the way her body struggled to respond. Can you move on your own? He asked carefully. Lyra shook her head. I cannot, she admitted. She had always been afraid of being a burden, and now, even in safety, she felt that old shame rising. Adrian did not recoil or sigh. Instead, he looked around and found some thick reeds and vines. Carefully, he created a temporary sling to support her body. We'll get you somewhere safe, he said. You'll be fine. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, not just from fear, but from the strange, unfamiliar feeling of being cared for. She had lived her life in a society that punished weakness, but this human, he did not see weakness. He saw a life worth saving. Across the river, her family began to move. Karn's voice boomed, angry and accusing. She is not ours anymore. You cannot save her. She belongs to the river now. Adrian did not answer. Instead, he lifted Lyra onto his shoulders, using his strength to carry her away from the river's edge and toward the human settlement. The marshes were treacherous, filled with sharp reeds, hidden sinkholes, and strange alien creatures. But Adrian moved carefully and quickly. He did not falter, and Lyra realized that for the first time someone truly believed in her survival. As they moved, Lyra tried to speak, her telepathic senses stirring. Humans could not naturally read minds like her people, but she found she could sense his intention, pure and unwavering. His courage, his empathy, his determination to save her, it all shone like a light through the mist. You are different, she said softly, almost to herself. Humans, you are different. Adrian glanced down. Different how? Lyra hesitated. You care. You do not judge. You do not abandon. You save, he smiled gently. I believe every life matters. You're not alone, Lyra. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to feel hope. The fear and betrayal of her family, the shame of her body, the uncertainty of the river. They were still there, but they were no longer overwhelming. She was alive, and someone had chosen to fight for her. As they reached a safer stretch of land, the first lights of the human settlement appeared in the distance. Strange structures glowing softly in warm colors rose above the marshes. It was a place of safety, of care, and of possibilities Lyra had never imagined. Behind them, the river continued to roar, dark and indifferent. But for Lyra, the river no longer represented only danger. It represented a turning point. The moment she met a human who would change the course of her life and perhaps the future of her entire people. Adrian paused for a moment, looking at the horizon. We're almost there, he said. You'll be safe now. I promise. Lyra nodded, tears running down her shimmering face. She felt the strength of someone else's will supporting her, carrying her forward. And as they continued toward the glowing settlement, she began to understand that even in a world filled with betrayal and danger, there were beings, humans, whose courage and empathy could change everything. The river had tried to take her. Her family had tried to abandon her. But one human had dived in, and that choice, that act of bravery, had opened a new path, one where Lyra could exist not as a burden, but as someone who mattered, and for the first time in her life she believed it. The human settlement rose like a small oasis in the middle of the alien marshlands. Its soft, glowing structures reflected on the waterlogged ground, creating pools of light that shimmered like distant stars. Adrian carefully carried Lyra across the uneven terrain. Each step was difficult. Her weight shifted unpredictably, and her fragile body required constant support. But he moved steadily, determined not to falter. Almost there, he said, voice calm but firm, as the soft hum of the settlement's energy fields grew louder. Lyra could barely respond. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Her limbs ached from the cold river and the exertion. When they reached the settlement, Adrian gently laid her on a soft, padded surface near one of the glowing structures. Humans bustled around, tending to machines and examining alien plants, but they paused when they saw him carrying Lyra. Her violet skin, wet and trembling, drew their curiosity, but none dared question Adrian. They trusted him. "Stay here," Adrian said, looking around. "I'll get someone to help." Lyra blinked, shivering. She wanted to speak, but her voice came out in a weak whisper. Why did you save me?" Adrian knelt beside her. "Because no one deserves to be abandoned," he said simply. "Because you're alive and I couldn't just watch you die. That's what humans do. We try to help." Lyra's mind struggled to comprehend. Her people valued strength above all else. Weakness was shameful, but here she saw a human who ignored weakness, who measured worth not by power or ability but by the life he could save. "Humans, you are different," she murmured. Adrian smiled faintly. "Maybe, but different isn't bad." A young human technician appeared carrying a set of medical tools. She knelt beside Lyra, examining her carefully. "She's weak but alive," she said. "Her vitals are low, but nothing is broken. We can help her recover." Adrian nodded. "Do whatever you can. She's important." Lyra listened, feeling a strange warmth. She was important? Not to her family, never to her family, but to this human. The thought seemed impossible, yet it filled her with hope. The technician gently lifted Lyra and guided her to a healing chamber. Soft lights bathed her in warmth, and a gentle hum from the machines filled the room. Lyra felt the tension in her body slowly ease, though her mind remained alert. She could sense the subtle patterns of energy in the room, the faint hum of human technology interacting with the alien environment. It was fascinating. Adrian stayed beside her, watching her closely. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you here," he said. Lyra's eyes met his. You trust me?" "I do," Adrian replied. "I believe in helping. I believe in life. And I see that you have strength even if your body doesn't always cooperate." Lyra hesitated, then began to explain what her people had never understood about her. She described the patterns she could see in the marshes, the subtle changes in the river currents, the warning signs of predators. I see things," she said softly. "I know where danger lies. I know when storms will come. But my family, they only see my weakness." Adrian listened carefully, intrigued. "You have knowledge that could save lives," he said. "Strength isn't always about muscles or speed. Sometimes it's about understanding, seeing what others cannot." Lyra's large eyes widened. No one had ever said that to her before. Not even her teachers, not even the elders of her tribe. She felt a flicker of pride, quickly swallowed by caution. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to feel hope? Before she could answer, the chamber's door slid open, and a holographic map of Virelia appeared in the air. Adrian gestured toward it. "I want you to help me understand your world," he said. "If you can guide me, we can explore safely, learn more, and maybe even help others." Lyra hesitated. Sharing knowledge with a human, someone outside her people, was forbidden. But looking at Adrian, she sensed something different. His intentions were pure. I can try," she said. For the next hours, Lyra began to explain what she knew. She traced the paths of the rivers with her fingers, described safe zones and dangerous swamps, predator patterns, and weather signs. Adrian listened, asking questions, learning from her. For the first time, Lyra's intelligence and insight were valued rather than dismissed. "You're amazing," Adrian said. "Your people don't see what they have in you. But humans, we understand that every mind has value. Every life has potential." Lyra's heart beat faster. Could it be true? Could someone really see her worth? The thought was dizzying and comforting at the same time. She felt warmth spreading through her, a sense of possibility she had never known. The next day, Adrian returned with portable equipment designed to help her move independently. Though she could not walk, the devices would allow her to float above the ground, glide through the settlement, and even navigate short distances in the marshes. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. These tools were a gift, proof of human ingenuity and care. "Now you can move on your own," Adrian said. "Not like your old device, but better, faster, safer." Lyra carefully tested the equipment, her body swaying slightly but her mind focused. She felt a thrill as she floated above the ground, moving in ways she never could before. I can move," she exclaimed, astonished. Adrian smiled. "Yes, you can." As she practiced, Lyra began to notice something else. Humans had a way of combining technology with empathy. They didn't just fix problems. They thought about how their solutions affected others. They considered feelings, safety, and trust. Lyra realized that her family, despite their power, had never understood this balance. Days passed. Lyra and Adrian explored the settlement together. She learned about human medicine, tools, and communication. In return, she shared her knowledge of Virelia, its plants, its predators, and the complex ecosystem of the marshes. The humans were fascinated, taking notes, recording data, and asking questions she had never thought to answer. "You're more than your body," Adrian said one evening, as the twin moons of Virelia rose over the horizon. "Your mind, your vision, your courage, those are your true strengths." Lyra looked at the glowing moons, feeling a new sense of clarity. For years she had been defined by what she could not do. Now she saw that there was another way, a way where her knowledge, her insight, and her unique perspective mattered more than her weakness. But the shadow of her family lingered. She could not forget the river, the betrayal, or the anger in her father's eyes. She wondered if they would ever understand, if they would ever see her worth as humans did. The thought was painful, but she refused to let it consume her. She had a choice now. She could remain hidden, fearful, and dependent, or she could embrace her new strength and the possibilities Adrian had opened for her. One day, while they were exploring the outer edges of the settlement, Lyra sensed a disturbance in the marshes. Her alien senses, honed over years of observing patterns, alerted her to danger. "Adrian, the river," she whispered urgently. He followed her gaze and saw a flash of movement, a predatory creature, long and sinuous, rising from the marsh waters. Its many eyes glimmered, and its sharp fangs caught the light. Humans had never seen such creatures before, and many would have panicked, but Lyra did not. She directed Adrian, explaining the creature's patterns and weaknesses. Using the tools and strategies they had practiced, they worked together. Adrian created a diversion, using a glowing device to attract the creature's attention, while Lyra calculated its path and guided him to safety. The creature lunged, but thanks to Lyra's knowledge and Adrian's quick reflexes, they escaped unharmed. Adrian looked at her amazed. "You saved us both," he said. Lyra shook her head, a small smile on her face. "We saved each other." In that moment, she realized the truth. Her value was not just in surviving or moving. It was in thinking, understanding, and working with others. With humans, she had found not only safety, but partnership, a bond that transcended species. That night, as they rested under the glowing lights of the settlement, Adrian spoke again. "Lyra, one day you will have to decide about your people. Will you return to them? Will you show them what you've become?" Lyra's eyes reflected the twin moons. She had not yet decided, but for the first time she felt power, courage, and purpose. She had survived the river, the betrayal, and the wilderness. She had been seen, saved, and respected, and now she knew that the world, and the humans in it, offered something she had never had: a chance to define her own life. The river that had once symbolized despair now seemed distant, almost small. She was no longer a victim of its currents or of her family's judgment. With Adrian by her side, she could learn, grow, and prepare for the challenges to come. And one day she promised herself she would return, not as a weak, paralyzed girl, but as a being who commanded respect, knowledge, and courage. And somewhere deep in her chest, Lyra felt a spark of hope that had never existed before. A hope that humans, in their strange, kind, and inventive ways, had helped her discover. The next morning, Lyra woke to a soft golden light spilling across the walls of the human settlement. She could feel the warmth through her violet skin, and for the first time in weeks, she felt calm. The air was filled with the hum of human machines, strange yet soothing, and she realized that for the first time she was safe. Adrian was already awake, studying a floating map of Virelia. He noticed her stirring and smiled. "Good morning," he said. "How do you feel?" Lyra stretched gently, testing her new mobility device. Her body was still weak, but she could move with grace, gliding across the floor. "Better. Much better," she said softly. "I never imagined I could move like this again." Adrian nodded. "Humans like to solve problems. We invent tools to help others, especially when nature or circumstances make life difficult. You deserve to have a chance, Lyra. Now you have one." Lyra's eyes reflected the glow of the room. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but she decided to begin with understanding. "Adrian, "Why do humans help?" she asked. "Your people could survive without me. You risked yourself in the river." "Why?" Adrian paused, looking thoughtful. "Because every life matters," he said simply. "We understand that even one life can change many. And courage is not just about fighting, it's about choosing to do what is right, even when it is difficult." Lyra considered this carefully. Her people valued strength and survival above all else. Weakness was rejected. But humans valued something she had never experienced: compassion and purpose beyond survival. As the morning passed, Adrian introduced Lyra to the settlement. She saw humans tending alien plants with precision, studying the environment, and learning about creatures like the river predators she had feared. They were curious, cautious, and careful, yet bold enough to explore a world that had been dangerous to her people for generations. Lyra noticed a pattern in their actions. They did not see the world in terms of power alone. They saw solutions, potential, and possibilities. She felt a spark of excitement. With humans, she could do what she had never been allowed to do: learn, grow, and contribute. A young human technician named Mira, not to be confused with Lyra's sister, approached, carrying a small device designed to monitor Lyra's health. "We'll keep you strong," she said kindly. "This will track your progress and help us adjust your therapy." Lyra studied the device, fascinated by its simplicity and intelligence. She realized humans could combine thought, technology, and care in ways her people had never understood. Her own family saw only weakness in her body. They had never imagined that her mind and insight could be strengthened by tools and guidance. Adrian and Lyra spent hours together, planning exploration missions across the marshes. Lyra pointed out dangerous paths, hidden predators, and safe zones. Adrian listened intently, recording everything. When she finished, he looked at her in amazement. "You know this world better than anyone," he said, "and yet you've been ignored even by your own people. That is wrong. But together, we can use this knowledge to protect lives, your people's lives, mine, and maybe even others who come to this planet." Lyra's heart stirred with hope. For the first time, she realized that her knowledge had power. It was not her legs that mattered, but her mind and her ability to see patterns, anticipate danger, and make decisions. Over the next few days, Adrian introduced Lyra to more human technology. She learned how to operate small vehicles, analyze the marsh's ecosystem, and use tools that allowed her to interact with the environment in ways she had never imagined. Her confidence grew, and with it, a quiet determination. She was no longer helpless. She was becoming capable, independent, and strong, but safety and learning could not erase the shadow of her past. One evening, while observing the river from a safe distance, Lyra's thoughts returned to her family. She could see the cliffs where her father and brother had thrown her into the water. She remembered their anger, their betrayal, and their belief that she was worthless. Adrian noticed her silence. "Thinking about home?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded. "Yes, and about them. My family. They believe I am weak. They cannot see me as I am. Not yet." Adrian placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You have changed, Lyra. You survived the river. You learned. You are stronger than they will ever know. And one day, they will see it too. Maybe you will teach them." Lyra's eyes reflected a mixture of fear and hope. Could she confront them? Could she return to the people who had abandoned her? But something inside her stirred, an inner strength born from trust, knowledge, and survival. The next day, Lyra decided to explore the marshes surrounding the settlement. Adrian accompanied her, carrying equipment and supplies. She moved gracefully on her device, scanning the water, plants, and creatures. She pointed out safe routes and areas to avoid. Adrian followed her instructions carefully, impressed by her intuition and insight. Suddenly, Lyra froze. Her senses tingled, alerting her to danger. In the distance, across the marsh, she saw movement. Her family had arrived. Karn, Dallin, and Mira's expressions were mixed: anger, concern, and something else she could not name. Adrian noticed her tense posture. Lyra, what is it? They came, she said softly. My family. They followed us. They must have seen the settlement, the technology. They may want me back, or worse. Adrian's eyes narrowed. We will protect you. Whatever they want, you will not face it alone. Lyra realized then that humans were not only helpers, they were allies, protectors, and partners. She had learned from them, but she had also begun to trust them with her life. For the first time, she felt that her survival, her choices, and her destiny were in her own hands, guided by her mind and her new human friends. Her family stepped closer. Karn's voice rang out across the marsh. Lyra, return to us. You belong. With your people. Lyra floated slightly higher on her device, steadying herself. I am not yours to command, she said firmly. I am my own. You tried to cast me away, to abandon me, and now I decide my path. Dalan stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. You are weak. You are nothing without us. Lyra felt the spark of her human-given confidence ignite. Weak? I survived the river. I learned from humans. I can move, think, and act. You cannot ignore what I have become. I am strong in ways you never understood. Karn's face twisted in disbelief. His daughter, once paralyzed, now glided across the marsh, unafraid and commanding. He had never seen her like this. Lyra realized that her people's definition of strength, physical power, dominance, aggression, was incomplete. True strength, she had learned from humans, combined courage, intellect, empathy, and action. Adrian stepped forward, standing beside her. She is not alone. Humans value life, intelligence, and courage. You cannot dismiss what she has become. Mira, Lyra's younger sister, looked down at her feet, shame and fear in her eyes. Lyra, I didn't understand. Lyra's heart softened slightly. It is not too late to learn, she said, but I will not be treated as a burden again. For a long moment the marsh was silent, the only sounds the gentle ripple of water and the hum of human machines. Then, slowly, Karn stepped back, realization dawning on his face. His daughter was no longer powerless. She had survived, learned, and grown. He could see it in her eyes, in the confidence of her voice, and in the way humans respected her. Lyra floated higher, her gaze steady. I will help my people, but only as I choose. I will teach them what I have learned, about survival, about courage, about strength that is more than just muscle. I will lead not as a weakling, but as someone who understands both worlds. Adrian nodded. And we will help you. Together. The river, once a symbol of betrayal and fear, now seemed small beneath the glow of the moons. Lyra realized that the currents that had tried to drown her were nothing compared to the currents of courage, knowledge, and friendship that now flowed through her. Her family's expressions softened, some in fear, some in awe. Lyra knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, resistance, and doubt. But she also knew something else. She was no longer helpless. She was no longer alone. With the lessons of humans and the strength she had discovered within herself, she could face whatever came next. That night, as she looked at the stars reflecting on the marsh waters, Lyra whispered a promise to herself. I will return. Not as the paralyzed girl you abandoned, but as someone who will change everything. You will see me, not as weak, but as strong, as wise, as capable. And you will learn that true strength is more than you ever imagined. And with that, Lyra felt a new sense of purpose, a clarity she had never known. The river could no longer define her. Her family's judgment could not hold her back. She was ready to step forward into the future, not as a victim but as a force to be reckoned with, guided by the courage and empathy of a human who had saved her life and opened her eyes to a world of possibilities. The sun rose over the marshlands of Veralia, casting golden light across the twisting rivers and misty plains. Lyra stood at the edge of the human settlement, her floating mobility device steady beneath her. Today she would return to her people, not as a weak, paralyzed girl, but as someone who had survived, learned, and grown. Adrian stood beside her, his eyes calm but alert. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra took a deep breath. She had practiced, prepared, and strengthened her mind and body. "I am," she said. "It is time they see me for what I truly am." The journey across the marsh was treacherous, but Lyra moved with confidence. Her device allowed her to glide above the reeds, and she carried small human tools that could help with navigation and communication. Adrian followed closely, ready to protect her if needed. But he knew that this moment belonged to Lyra. When they arrived at her tribe's village, the first sight was startling. Her father, Karn, and brother Dallin were there, surrounded by others. The village was tense, the Varelians whispering among themselves, watching the returning figure float above the marshes. Karn's eyes widened as he recognized Lyra. "It cannot be," he muttered. She survived." Lyra floated forward, her device moving smoothly above the ground. Her violet skin shimmered in the sunlight, and her eyes reflected both strength and intelligence. She was no longer the helpless figure they had abandoned. She was transformed. "I survived," she said firmly, her voice echoing across the village. "Not because of you, but because I had the courage to continue. Because I learned, because I trusted, and because I refused to be weak." Dallin stepped forward, scowling. "You are different, but you are still our sister. You will return with us, obey us, and live under our rules." Lyra shook her head, floating slightly higher. "I will not obey out of fear. I will not live under rules that treat life as meaningless. I have learned that strength is not just physical. True strength is courage, wisdom, and empathy. I will lead, not because you demand it, but because I choose to help my people survive and grow." A murmur ran through the village. The Varelians had never seen a family member speak with such authority, confidence, and vision. They were used to hierarchical strength, measured by muscle and aggression. Lyra had changed all of that. Adrian stepped forward, standing beside her. "She has seen the world beyond this village," he said. "Humans helped her learn, survive, and grow. You cannot ignore her knowledge and courage. They are a gift to your people if you are willing to see it." Karn's face twisted with anger and confusion. "You, a human? Supporting her?" he spat. "This is unnatural." Lyra remained calm. "Unnatural is ignoring talent, knowledge, and courage. Unnatural is abandoning someone who could help save lives. Humans taught me that every life matters. I survived because someone believed in me. Now I will teach you." For the first time, Mira, her younger sister, stepped forward. "Lyra, I was wrong. I did not understand. You have always been stronger than I realized." Lyra's expression softened slightly. "It is not too late to learn," she said. "You can choose to see strength differently, to value wisdom, courage, and compassion as well as physical power." The village elders, usually silent observers, exchanged glances. Some nodded subtly, recognizing the truth in her words. The tribe had faced threats from predators, storms, and the marsh itself. Knowledge, strategy, and foresight were just as important as raw strength. Lyra had demonstrated these qualities in ways no one had anticipated. Karn's voice broke the silence. "If what you say is true, then show us. Teach us what humans have taught you. Prove that your survival and knowledge can benefit us, not just yourself." Lyra nodded. "I will," she said. "But only if you are willing to listen and learn. Those who refuse cannot stop the world from changing, but they may find themselves left behind." Over the next days, Lyra began teaching her people. She shared her knowledge of the marshes, showing the safest routes, the locations of hidden dangers, and the best ways to gather food without risk. She explained the signs of storms and predators, using both her experience and the tools Adrian had given her. The Varelians listened, first reluctantly, then with increasing interest. She also introduced some human technology, simple devices that allowed them to communicate over distances, monitor water levels, and alert the tribe to danger. At first there was fear and skepticism. Some believed these tools were unnatural or weak, but when Lyra demonstrated how they could prevent accidents, find lost members, and save lives, doubt turned into respect. Adrian watched from the edge of the village, proud of Lyra. She had grown from a paralyzed girl abandoned by her family into a leader whose courage and wisdom commanded attention. Humanity had given her tools and guidance, but it was her mind and heart that had transformed her. One evening, after a long day of teaching and exploration, Lyra stood by the river once more. She gazed at the water that had once threatened to take her life, feeling a sense of closure. The currents no longer frightened her. They were a reminder of her past, yes, but also of her survival and growth. Karn approached quietly. "Lyra," he said, his voice subdued. I did not understand before. I see it now. You are more than I ever imagined." Lyra turned to face him, her eyes calm but steady. "I am still your daughter, your sister," she said. "But I am also my own. I have learned that strength comes in many forms. I hope you will learn this too. You can lead better if you embrace knowledge, courage, and compassion, not just muscle and dominance." Karn bowed his head slightly, a sign of respect he had rarely shown. Delan too seemed thoughtful, no longer filled only with anger. Mira ran forward and hugged Lyra, tears of relief and admiration streaming down her face. The river, once a symbol of betrayal and danger, now reflected the twin moons of Aurelia and the soft glow of human settlement lights. Lyra realized that the currents that had tried to destroy her had instead carried her to a new life, one where she could bridge two worlds. Over the following months, Lyra worked with her people, teaching them the strategies she had learned from humans and the lessons of her own life. The tribe grew stronger, wiser, and more adaptable. Humans and Varelians began cooperating, sharing knowledge, technology, and culture. Lyra became a bridge between the two species, respected by both. She no longer hid her disability or feared judgment. Her floating mobility device was a symbol of human ingenuity and her own strength. She demonstrated that courage, intellect, and compassion were as valuable, if not more so, than physical prowess. One day, as she floated above the river with Adrian by her side, she reflected on how far she had come. From the moment she had been cast into the river by her own family, she had survived, learned, and grown. Humanity had shown her the power of empathy, courage, and innovation. And she had returned to her people not as a victim, but as a leader who could inspire change. Adrian smiled. "You've done more than survive," he said. "You've changed your world." Lyra looked at the horizon, the twin moons reflecting in the water. "No," she said softly. "We've changed it, together." The Varelians had learned that weakness was not a sentence to death or abandonment. Humans had shown them that strength included courage, intellect, and empathy, and Lyra, once paralyzed and cast aside, had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary potential of life itself. The river no longer threatened her. It no longer represented shame. It reflected the journey of survival, the courage to fight, and the power of human kindness and ingenuity. Lyra knew challenges would still come: storms, predators, and perhaps even conflicts with her people's old ways. But she also knew she had the strength, the knowledge, and the courage to face them. She had been saved once, yes, but now she could save herself and others, and in doing so, redefine what it meant to be strong. As the sun set, casting the marshlands in golden and violet hues, Lyra floated above the river, Adrian beside her, and her people watching from the banks. She felt a sense of peace, purpose, and destiny. She was no longer a victim of circumstance. She was a leader, a bridge, and a survivor, proof that courage, intelligence, and compassion could reshape worlds. And so the story of Lyra, the paralyzed alien woman who had been cast into the river and saved by a human, became a legend, a tale of HFY, where humanity's empathy, courage, and ingenuity changed a life, a tribe, and an entire planet forever.